Hey, footy fans, and welcome to Boothy's AFL Fantasy Dream Team podcast. Well, this is my team for round 5 coming up this weekend. Now, last week I had a late change and I didn't put it on my podcast, and that was on the right hand side there. Round 4, I did get rid of Simpson for Newman as I suggested I would, but when Barrett was dropped after his 90 odd the week before, which staggered me, I actually got in Luke Shuey for Barrett. With the money I saved from getting Newman in for Simpson. So basically out went Simpson, who was averaging around 90 for Newman, who got 70 odd the other day, but now he's been dropped unfortunately. And Barrett, who got dropped, of course, I brought Shuey in, who got 132. So I did pretty well out of that. So for this round, the changes I will make, the trades are 2, and they're on the right-hand side in the orange yellow. One is Cruiser's been rested for Carlton, and he's probably done his dash. That price there is not actually right. I just realised he's 520. I just realised that price is actually wrong. I apologise for that. So Cruiser was around the 520 mark. Anyway, he's gone. I'm bringing in Longer for 281 from St Kilda because basically they've dropped Hickey for Longer. And I said in my podcast at the start of the year before the season began, if Longer's playing, he's good for 70 or 80. So I reckon the money I save from Cruiser for Longer, which is, I think from memory it was nearly 300,000, so Cruiser must be in the high 500s. That price isn't right though, that was Grundy's price. Then with that money I can basically get rid of Eddie, who's not playing for Port Adelaide at the moment, and he was priced about the 179 mark. And I got Clay Smith from the Bulldogs, who after one game got 85 points, and he was priced at 397. So Longer and Clay Smith this week for Eddie, who's not playing at all, and Cruiser, who's obviously been rested. So that improves my side, I reckon. Now, Clay Smith did get 140 in a game late last year as well, and in the finals averaged closer to 85 or 90 himself, and his price probably more like 68 or 69, so he should make money for me. Anyway, so my team had a disappointing week, I guess. It went from ranked 9,000 to nearly 11,000 on the back of only scoring 1938. Most people scored sort of $2,000-ish. And if you scored 2,100 or anything like that, you did very well. So my total after round 4 is 8,339, which is an average of nearly 2,100 per week almost, not quite, which is solid. But unfortunately, the leader's on 8,998, and the person in 100th position or 99th is on 8,746. So I guess from that position now, I'm about 400 behind the top 100, which is where you get the cap at the end of the year. It's a bit exciting, but 400 behind, so I need a really big week. So just quickly, my team now is Adams, Johannesson, Jones, McGrath from Essendon, who I'm going to put on the field after his 90 last week, Hampton, and I put Newman on the field, even though he's been dropped for Sydney, because I'm not convinced they're going to play both the players they said they'll play. So what I'm doing is I'm putting Newman, who's averaging 80, who's an emergency for Sydney tomorrow, Saturday against GWS. I'm putting him on the field in D6, and I'm making Otten my emergency. If Newman doesn't play because he hasn't been selected, then I'll get Otten's score. But if Newman does play, because a couple of guys they picked for Sydney, Heaney hasn't played for weeks, and also Rowan hasn't played for a long time. So if one of those pulls out because they're not quite ready, because sometimes teams play ducks and drakes, then I'll have Newman score rather than Otten's. So that's why I'm putting him on the field, and Otten emergency, which I'll get if Newman pulls out. The only risk of doing that is if one of the other guys pulls out, like an Adams or Johannesson, and then Newman doesn't play either, then I won't get Otten's emergency score because Newman hasn't been named. So that's the only risk I take. So Dangerfield's still captain after a knock in the ribs, but seemed fine. I only got 93, I think it was last week, but he has averaged 117 this year, 234 as captain. Treloar, Shuey, who are brought in, and Gaff is fantastic. Fife and Beams and Lloyd. So my midfield's great, can't complain. Powell Pepper, I'll give him one more chance because Port have put faith in him after a tough game against GWS where he only scored about 39 or 40. I can't get him out this week because the other trades I wanted to make. Pickett emergency for Carlton is averaging 39 or 40 now. So it's a good, really solid midfield, particularly if Powell Pepper gets 60 or 70. Rucks are now Martin and Longer there, so it's not as strong as some, but still could be solid. And my forward line is Dowhouse, Bradley Hill, who's doing really well, averaging 87. Steele is averaging 84. Roughhead will give him one more chance, 73. And now Clay Smith averaging 85 for Bulldogs, and Hoskin Elliott averaging 96. So my forward line's okay. An emergency there is Butler from Richmond, who's averaging 64. And Balak, unfortunately, had a little injury, a hip, I think it was. But I think Balak's a sort of player I'm happy to have in my dream team because He will play, got 70 odd last week. He will play a number of games this year, I reckon, and so will Taylor Miles from Hawthorn, who's still on my field in the midfield, as long as you've got emergency. So this week my emergencies are Pickett, and also Butler, who sort of good for 40 to 50 to 60, those guys, maybe 70 for Butler. And in defence, as I said, I'm risking it a bit because Newman is not named, but he's an emergency for Sydney on Saturday. So I don't really have an emergency for my defence at the moment, unless Newman does play, and then I've got Otten as my emergency. And Bruce was dropped in the ruck, so I don't have an emergency ruck this week, but nor do most of the comp. So that's my team. The two changes I said in orange. I didn't have a great week last week, as I said, but still ranked in the top 11,000. Hopefully I do well this week. My advice to all of you out there is try and bring in at least one player who's either a gun, like is in averaging over 100, or bring in two really solid players who can score highly. For example, this week I brought in Longer, who could get 100 as a ruckman, and Clay Smith, who got 140 in a game last year. Although they're both mid-price type players, at least they've got the potential to score 100. So be careful bringing in guys who've never scored 100, who just have one good week who get 80. Try and bring in guys who are experienced or have got big scores, or maybe bring in one gun and one cheapie for two sort of mid-prices, so if you get rid of Roughhead and one other. So good luck, guys. Let me know how you go, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now.